Welcome back to Switch to Linux and another Distro Wars. Well, today we're going to be looking at MX Linux and Peppermint OS. These are two Linux distributions that I actually both actively use them in production right now. I use Peppermint OS right now for my banking computer that I don't do any banking on anything other than that one dedicated computer, which is just a USB drive that I can boot into from any other computer in the office. That stores all the passwords for banking stuff, all banking connections, all that kind of stuff, and also the databases for my book sales and the books associated with the publishing company. All that's done on Peppermint. I use MX Linux presently on my writing computer. I write books. I'm an author, and so I have one computer dedicated just to writing, and it's just on a little small low-power computer that works very nicely. I've been using that for about 4 years now. That one was formerly running Peppermint. I switched over to MX Linux about 3 or 4 months ago. I forget. Whenever I did my more comprehensive MX Linux review, that's when I switched over to that. And so I'm going to be speaking here from perspectives. I'm going to give you kind of the pros and the cons, the problems I've had, the lack of problems I've had in some instances. So first, let's go ahead and have a look at their individual websites. Head on over here to MX Linux. You come right here. You have a download button. There's hardware and there's some extra support. They have some good videos about it. When you head on over to the download, they have a couple different options to download. You can download from a direct repository, mirrors, or torrents. Now, we do have a couple of options. They recently added a KDE version. This is only 64-bit. So if you do need 32-bit, you are going to be using the XFCE version. But the KDE 64-bit, and this uses the Advanced Hardware Stack Linux kernel. They have the 32-bit, which the other ones are all XFCE. So XFCE and Fluxbox, same ISO. So they have the 32-bit, they have a 64-bit, and they have a 64-bit Advanced Hardware Stack for the more recent hardware. So if you are using more recent hardware, have a look at the Advanced Hardware Stack. That's probably going to work a little bit better. If you're just good old-fashioned old hardware like my Lenovo S21e, I just went ahead and used the standard version. Current version is MX 19.2. This is, of course, based on Debian, but he's done a ton to make this one of the best Debian-based distributions. I'm going to say that if you want to run Debian-based and get away from the Ubuntu-based packages, MX Linux is probably going to be your best Debian to work to build in the user friendliness. Now, if you're a Linux purist, go ahead and just use the Debian, and you're going to know how to make some changes, how to adjust your system for all those different things that you're going to need to do. But if you don't know how to do those things, MX Linux has all of those tools built right in. Very excellent. All right, the other distro we're looking at is an Ubuntu-based distribution. This is Peppermint OS. This is an excellent OS. They did just recently redesign their website, and I'm not a huge fan of the redesign here. If you want to download Peppermint, you want to come down to the bottom menu down here, download and install, or click the menu button, go down to User's Guide, and download and install is here. The second big criticism I have about this is there's no clear download button. You have to go down, and it's actually embedded in the text here with their link style sheet matching the rest of the style, except it has the underlines under it. So you're just going to grab the 32 or 64-bit on the torrent or grabbing them directly. They do have information about how to verify your checksum, and that's actually very good to have that listed on this page here. They do have 32 and 64-bit. My guess is when the next version drops, they may drop 32-bit. I haven't heard one way or the other. It's just because they're based on Ubuntu, and the version of Ubuntu that's next for them has dropped 32-bit support. So likely in future versions, we may not have this. We're using 10 respin is what we are doing. The Peppermint team, these guys understand this too. They had a kind of a rocky beginning of the year where their lead developer suddenly and unexpectedly passed away. And so forgive them as they're retooling and remapping. Peppermint is an excellent distribution, and the existing team is an excellent team of guys. So they do have more useful information to help you get along. They are generally very active, and they will respond to requests for help, but they do have a lot of extra information to help you out along the way. So with that being said, let's go ahead and boot these guys up, and we are going to start by having a look at MX Linux. So we're going to start here, and here's our MX Linux. Now, the installers, I'm not going to show you the installers, but the installers, Peppermint is just basically the Ubuntu installer. No big deal. If you've installed Ubuntu or an Ubuntu derivative, you're going to be very familiar with it. The MX Linux is one of the better installers because a lot of the settings you can set while it's installing. So do you want 12-hour or 24-hour time on your clock? You can set that. You can turn on or turn off network shares and a few other services as MX Linux is getting set up. So with that, you boot on into MX Linux. This is what we have. We have our very nice MX Welcome Pack. So since this is based on Debian, it's not going to install codecs out of the box. That is an option you can tick on the installer on Peppermint, but here on MX Linux, when you land on the welcome screen, there's a codecs button down here. Go ahead and click on the codecs option, and this is going to give you the ability to install your codecs. So it's going to tell you application needs to install restricted codecs that permit advanced video and audio functions. Some jurisdictions, distribution may be limited, so the user must meet local regulations. All right, so just hit OK. It's going to install all of your codecs. We also have a popular app store. This makes it very easy to find popular applications. This is not going to contain everything, but it's going to contain just about everything you can think of that you're going to need. This is one of your good features and functions inside of this. All right, so you can see, I mean, this guy has WaterFox, we have Brave, we have Chromium, we have Chrome, Pale Moon, just a variety of different browsers and things. We have a couple different docks, we have development, we also have desktop environments. So if you want to run other desktop environments other than XFCE, you can actually install those very easily through here. That's an option you do not get with Peppermint. All right. Now we also, though, have some other options in here. So the Debian backports. These guys here are the steps. Now, when I put together my writing computer, I went ahead with the longer way around. But you can actually come down into here and you can install things like the latest versions of LibreOffice. You can set up over here without having to go through and do some of the more complicated steps. So it's not, you can see it's not quite as easy to figure out, but you do have the option. This is going to give you the ability to install the latest version of LibreOffice available in the Debian backports. I don't know if they're up to 7 yet or not, but it is definitely going to have, I believe, at least 6.3 or 6.4. We have Flatpak options here as well, based out of the box. So go ahead and enter that. It's going to take a moment. And I believe it's set up with, you can see it's set up here with FlatHub. So anything in the FlatHub repositories, we are going to have available to us from the MX package installer as well. This will take a little bit of time to get its, oh, there it goes. Okay, I was going to jump on there if it didn't. So we don't have the pictures there, but you can pretty much search for what you're looking for. So, you know, if you want to do like Spotify or something, there you go. You have Spotify. Looks like we do not have any other repos available. My guess is you can add extra repos in there, but that's the MX package installer. We do have Synaptic for more options. We have tweaking the panels, so you can go ahead, when you click on that button, it creates a copy of what you currently have, so you can restore it. So you can actually set your panel up to be on the top or on the bottom. You don't have to do it the way that I did it in my other books as well. We can do various theming here, compositors, displays, configuration options, others. So you have a lot of different options for your theming. So there's XFCE panel settings, appearance panel settings. So that's just your XFCE colors. So there is your panel tweaks. Let's see, is there anything else in there? Basic themes, compositor, if you want to change that, display configuration options. We also have MX Tools. This is one of the things that makes MX Linux such a good distribution. You can create a snapshot of your whole system. You can create a live USB based on what you have. We have options to do boot repairs, booting options, a lot of the different things that you may need to do for system administration, NVIDIA driver installers. Here's the welcome. Here's your tweak tools, Conky settings. So many options inside of here all makes MX Linux really good. We're not going to go through what is available on install. Now, of course, I set mine up. I don't really care for the menu on the side like this. I set mine up along the bottom the same way traditional Windows is. And the other thing I'm going to say about MX is, as I'm using this, I have actually had a few more issues on this in the 3 months I've been running it than the 3 or 4 years I had Peppermint on my Lenovo S21e. Nothing was serious, groundbreaking stuff, but I'd get things like the file manager sometimes will freeze. So when I close this, it's kind of frozen. It won't want to freeze. There's a couple little odds and ends, nothing that is horribly bad. I don't recall having any kernel panics, but that's my experience on MX. Overall, actually very good. Definitely within a margin of error that I don't have enough problems that makes me want to say, let's go ahead and dump it and put something else on. So there's my thoughts on MX. Let's go ahead and have a look at Peppermint next. All right, so here we are on Peppermint's login screen. You can see it's here on the virtual machine, at least, it's much nicer. I find that in real production, they're both equally good. Although I really do like the way Peppermint has themed theirs out of the box, but I'm never a huge detractor one way or the other of the login screens. I mean, you should see it for not a whole lot of time. It is possible to edit and adjust those. I don't know, maybe I'll do a video about those someday, maybe I won't, who knows. All right, so here we are on Peppermint, and this version is Peppermint 10 Respin. That would be the last update there. So over here we have our update manager here. It says there could be an update. Okay, there's one update available. I ran updates last night, didn't run updates today. But we have one update available. We didn't highlight the update manager in MX Linux. It basically loads up Synaptic Package Manager. This one here is actually using the Linux Mint updater. So if you're familiar with how the Linux Mint updater works, it's utilizing the same one here. So here we just have a basic upgrade package. So go ahead and run the updates just like this. I do find that the updates are more streamlined on Peppermint than they are on MX Linux. We don't have a welcome screen on Peppermint, so you're not greeted with how to change and adjust your settings out of the box. But if you head on over to the Peppermint settings panel here, this actually covers a lot of the features and things that you want. So Peppermint Control Center here, this is going to control Windows, keyboards and pointers, desktop effects, advanced. So a lot of the basic UI looks. They also have the ability here, here's some various themes. You can pick with various different themes, but there's also a lot of other sections and settings about how to change some of your theming. So customizing your look and feel. Once again, we have the variety of themes. These are just kind of changing our colors around a little bit. I actually really like their theming out of the box. I like the red dark theme. It is very nice. We will find it here, I hope, but there are actually various ways you can theme and change your panel settings. They make it very easy to switch and change your settings back and forth. All right, so if you don't like the way that the panel setup is configured, under your panel preferences, this is where you can make adjustments to your colors, your items that are on the panel, the display. You can hit your backup and restore, and we have a variety of different themes. So the Peppermint 10 is the one we're currently running, but you can go back to the old one. So the apply is the button with the little gears. You can see that this guy is utilizing a different menu. That's the way that setup is. Here's your old classic GNOME 2. Redmond, which is more like a Windows type approach. There's XFCE's default 412. and then a couple of different Xubuntu panel builds. I'm not a huge fan of any of those. I actually just really like the Peppermint 10 build, the default box. So you can go ahead, and if you make any changes, you can actually save your configurations as well in the event you want to go back to the ones that you have saved. So those are your panel preferences. Here's colorizing the folder icons, wallpaper settings. Peppermint always had some really nice wallpapers with it. Very beautiful. All right, tweaks. You can reset the panel to defaults. So if you were to change something and mess up your panel, you can go ahead and do that. We have an advertiser blocker. MX Linux also has the advertiser blocker. Basically, it's going to add a lot of things into your hosts file. The unfortunate thing is the latest versions of Firefox wants to enable DNS over HTTPS. All of these ad blockers are useless if you have that turned on, because Firefox will no longer... they will no longer respect your host files. We do have a browser manager, so it's not quite as many options as you have inside of MX for installing browsers through their MX package manager. But we can install Firefox, Chrome, GNOME Web, Vivaldi, Chromium, Falcon, Brave, and Opera. So we do have a lot of options for installing your various sizes there. If you're lacking a driver, we have an additional drivers, which will do a system check for any other drivers that you could have. And then we have ICE packages. This is a reason why I use this for my banking computer. Although I think the latest versions of Linux Mint are going to contain a similar feature. These are actually something that they're starting to experiment with in Linux Mint. So the ICE applications produces a containerized web browser instance of any given website. So on my banking computer, I use ICE applications to isolate every one of my banking accounts so none of my banks can read the cookies of any of my other banks. They can't be harvesting data about who I'm doing business with. And we have our software manager. Now, one of the downsides of Peppermint from the user perspective, particularly the new user perspective, is there's actually multiple software managers. We have this one is the Linux Mint software manager. We have the GNOME software manager. We do have Synaptic Package Manager. So there are a boatload of ways to run your software. So where this could be a criticism is if you don't know which one's which and you're used to one of these and then you accidentally boot up the other, you're like, something changed. And that could certainly be a criticism. So there is a little bit about Peppermint. So it was kind of originally written as sort of like a Chrome OS type thing. So everything is kind of package based. If you look under Office, we have Microsoft stuff. These are all the ICE applications hooked into popular online cloud-based systems. They're not actually applications. They're just ICE apps. You can go ahead into the ICE control panel and kill those if you are inclined to do so. If we can remember where my ICE applications were, so you have over here. So these are all of those. So they have a lot of games hooked in. They have a lot of different things. Hey, look at that. We have the Destination Linux network. That's awesome. So you can go ahead if you don't want Google Calendars, just go ahead and remove it. Google Drive, remove it. Remove that. Or remove that, remove that. So now when you actually look into the options here, you can see that we've removed those. So we'll keep that one there. So you can see what you're able to do with ICE applications. So Linux Mint is working on one of these guys as well. Overall, Peppermint, my experience with Peppermint, I ran Peppermint 7. Now, that was a couple years back. I ran Peppermint 7 for 3 years. In 3 years, I've had exactly one kernel panic where something broke, ever. Where I ended up upgrading it eventually to MX Linux was because it was nearing the end of life. Some software applications were not working as well after doing updates and things like that, because that's generally what starts to happen in Linux distributions after they're pretty old. So I decided, should I continue to run with Peppermint, or did I want to go over to MX Linux? And I actually chose to go with MX Linux simply because MX Linux was MX Linux there was a Debian based, and I kind of wanted to move away from the Ubuntu based packages for the writing computer, just mostly for gaining extra experience in the things that we were doing. So there's my look at MX Linux and Peppermint. Which one is the better? I really can't say that there's necessarily a better one of the two. They both are very good. They're both very stable. I did have fewer problems on Peppermint, but when I did finally have a problem, it was terminal. I had to wipe the computer and rebuild it. In that case, though, it was because I was running a much older version of Peppermint, and it was just getting old and old and older and older. And after about 3 or 4 years, it's about time to change the operating system anyway, unless you're running something like Arch that rolls. MX Linux, I have had a few more issues with it, but nothing that's serious or compromises the system. I've had the file manager will stop working a couple times, and I might have had 1 or 2 reboots on the system, but nothing super critical, honestly. Actually, I don't think that computer rebooted. But anyway, they're both very good. MX Linux is going to give you more options for easily installing Flatpaks, installing extra desktop environments, Debian backports, which will get you some of the later versions of software that Ubuntu may not be shipping yet. Peppermint's going to give you a lot of the features that come with Ubuntu, driver installed utilities, probably a little bit more hardware support, and a few other, just more streamlined in the approach. They're both excellent, and I would not say avoid any of them at any point. They're both very good distributions. So thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to help support this channel, have a look at switchtolinux.com/support. These are all the various ways you can help support the channel. I do have my own personal support network. We are switched everything over to Stripe. So if you were on Think Life Media, you will need to re-up the account on Stripe from PayPal's. PayPal's no longer the payment processor over there. We also added Subscribestar, subscribestar.com/switched to Linux, and we are still on Patreon, patreon.com/TOMM. You can also donate with Libre Pay and coin payments, and we have affiliates and a merchandise store as well. So with that, also have a look at the social media sites. We have accounts on Twitter and several of the alternative sites as well. Those will be up there above me. Thanks for coming along, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.